In this lecture, we introduce the tradition of Judaism. Judaism has way fewer people than the other religions that we're studying in this course. As of the year 2012, there were about 13.7 million Jews in the world. One of the most important countries is the United States, which has about 5.4 million. Canada has 0.38 million, that is 380,000. Argentina has 1.8 million. The United Kingdom has 0.29. France has 0.48, that is 480,000. Russia has 0.19. And for the country with the biggest number, we'll zoom in on the Middle East here. Here's the upper right corner of Africa here. Here's the oil-rich nation of Saudi Arabia. Here's Asia up here on the right. Right here is the modern country of Israel. And Israel has 5.9 million Jews. So it has more than any other country. There's an interesting story about how the modern nation of Israel came about. We'll tell that story in a later lecture. At 13.7 million, this is a pretty small religion. By comparison, there are 14.7 million Mormons. This is a religion that only began in America in the 19th century. And there are 23 million Sikhs. Why then are we covering Judaism in this class? There are two reasons. First of all, understanding Judaism is foundational to understanding both Christianity and Islam, the first and second largest religions in the world. In different ways, these two religions, as it were, grew out of the Jewish root. The second reason is that Jews have long been influential far beyond their numbers. In a famous essay written in 1898, the American writer Mark Twain said, quote, "If statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous dim puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly to be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are also way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in this world in all the ages, and had done it with his hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed, and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other people have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now or have vanished. The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?" End quote. Here are some extremely influential Jews in recent times, but these are Jews who would call themselves atheists or agnostics. Now you might think the term atheistic Jew is an oxymoron, that is, a contradiction in terms. And it's interesting that we don't usually talk about Christian atheists or Muslim atheists. Why then do so many people accept the label Jewish atheist? The answer is that Jewishness is for them a strong cultural identity. They're very proud of this identity. Jews have nearly always been a small minority where they live, and they've survived a great many persecutions, a great many adverse situations, as we'll see. One could say that terms like Jew and Jewish are ambiguous. They have, first of all, a theological meaning. That is, someone who holds typical Jewish beliefs about God and the human race. In that sense, an atheist wouldn't be a Jew. But there's also a sociological sense of the term. Here, a Jew is just someone who is a functioning member of some Jewish community, some community that identifies itself as Jewish. Third, the term could be used in a racial sense. In this sense, a Jew would be somebody from a certain racial stock with a certain genetic heritage. However, there isn't just one heritage. Within religious Jewish communities, there actually are a couple of different lineages. In these last two senses, then, atheistic Jew is not a contradiction in terms. One might well be an atheist, someone who believes there is no God, or an agnostic, which is somebody who neither believes that God exists nor believes that there is no God. An agnostic is someone who is sitting on the fence, as it were, when it comes to the question of God. One could be one of those and be a Jew in the sociological and racial sense. Let's turn now from the present to history. Where did Judaism come from? Judaism does not have any precise date of origin. A fairly traditional answer would be to say that something like Judaism arose in the middle of the second millennium BCE. In other words, in between 2000 and 1000 BCE. Depending how you define Judaism, other people would say that it arose perhaps in the 10th century or the 7th century or the 6th century BCE. And there is no one single obvious founder of Judaism. However, all Jews consider themselves to be the spiritual and many times often the physical descendants of Abraham. That's their patriarch, that's their founding father. And later in this lecture, we'll look at his story as told in the Bible. Another important figure for Jews is the prophet Moses. This is the one through whom they believe that God gave them their distinctive law, and he's considered the author of the first 5 books of the Bible, which are called the Torah. In the next segment, then, an overview of the Jewish Bible.